Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into the history, the crazy engineering, and the enduring myths of an absolute marvel. Just as the Gateway of India defines Mumbai, the Howrah Bridge is literally the heart and soul of Kolkata. It's a massive structure that millions of us cross, but honestly, very few people truly understand. So buckle up, because we are going to unpack the incredible, secret story of this iconic landmark. But hey, before we get into the nuts and bolts, or actually scratch that, the lack of them, which we'll talk about in a minute, I want to hook you with a really bizarre mystery. Did you know that traffic on the Howrah Bridge is strictly banned from entering at exactly 12 noon and 12 midnight every single day, without fail? It's just such an incredibly specific rule for one of the busiest bridges on the planet. I mean, why on earth would they do that? Keep that question in the back of your mind, because this midnight mystery is going to be the thread that ties our whole explainer together today. Okay, let's dive into this. Our story actually starts way back in the late 1800s, when there was absolutely no bridge at all over the Hooghly River. If you wanted to cross between Calcutta and Howrah, you had to hop on a boat. It wasn't until 1871 that the British administration finally decided, okay, a bridge is necessary. By 1887, Sir Bradford Leslie had built an initial crossing costing 22 lakhs, known as the Jubilee Bridge. But here's where the plot thickens. In 1905, Howrah Station was built, and that created massive, completely unprecedented traffic. The old Jubilee Bridge, it just couldn't handle it. Then World War I caused huge delays, but finally, in 1922, the new Howrah Bridge Committee was formed to solve this massive traffic nightmare. What's really fascinating here is the sheer geopolitical drama surrounding the bridge's contract. When the committee finally issued the tender for construction, a German company actually came forward with the absolute lowest bid. They promised to build it for the cheapest price, but because this was right on the heels of World War I, the British still viewed Germany as an enemy and just flat out rejected their offer. No way. Instead, this massive contract was awarded to an Indian public sector company, Braithwaite, Byrne and Jessup Construction Company, under the supervision of Calcutta's port commissioners. Now, to pull this off, the project required a staggering 26,500 tons of steel. Let that number really sink in for a second. 26,500 tons. In the 1930s, producing that huge amount of material was just an incredible logistical hurdle. Global supply chains were heavily constrained, and honestly, getting that much raw material for a single infrastructure project seemed nearly impossible. So you're probably wondering, where on earth did all that steel come from? Well, when global supply chains were completely frozen, an Indian company stepped up as the absolute hero of this project. Tata Steel supplied an overwhelming 89% of the required steel. That's 23,500 tons of it. The remaining 3,000 tons were sourced from a few other smaller companies. But without Tata Steel's massive manufacturing capability right there in India, this bridge might never have gotten off the drawing board. But, securing the steel was only half the battle. The actual design was the real headache. The British mandate for this bridge was incredibly strict. There could be absolutely zero pillars in the middle of the river. Why? Because the Hooghly River was a really vital shipping route, and they needed river traffic to flow freely without bumping into anything. This meant that the entire massive weight of this heavy steel bridge had to be supported entirely by just two pillars located at the very extreme ends of the bridge. The sheer scale of what these engineers managed to pull off is honestly mind-boggling. The bridge stretches over 2,300 feet long and 71 feet wide. It towers 269 feet into the sky. And because there are no middle pillars to hold it up, the span between the two ends is a dizzying 1,500 feet. This incredible feat of engineering makes it the sixth longest cantilever bridge in the entire world. And this brilliantly illustrates what is probably the most mind-blowing fact about the Howrah Bridge. This massive 26,500-ton steel behemoth does not use a single nut or bolt, not one. Instead, it's held together entirely by rivets. Basically, giant heated metal pins that permanently bind the steel plates together. It is an absolute masterpiece of classic construction techniques. The actual construction of this riveted giant kicked off in 1936 and took 6 grueling years, finally wrapping up in 1942. It was opened to the public in 1943 simply under the name the New Howrah Bridge. Fast forward a few decades to 1965, and it was officially renamed Rabindranath Setu, to honor the legendary Bengali poet Rabindranath Tagore. Although, let's be real, pretty much everyone still knows it and loves it as the Howrah Bridge. Now, for a bridge of this magnitude, you'd probably expect some massive, flashy ribbon-cutting ceremony, right? But do you know how many inauguration ceremonies it actually had? 0. Zilch. Because it was completed in 1942, right in the thick of World War II, the world was in a really dark place. The authorities decided that throwing a lavish celebratory party while the globe was suffering through a devastating war would be, well, highly inappropriate. So it simply opened for business, quietly and without any fuss. And that World War II timing brings us to a seriously remarkable chapter of its history. This bridge didn't just quietly open during a war, it actively survived one. During the conflict, Japanese forces made multiple bombing runs specifically targeting the Howrah Bridge, desperately trying to take out this vital piece of infrastructure. But miraculously, all of their attempts failed, and the bridge stood strong against the bombardments. It quite literally survived against all odds. So, the crucial point is, we still haven't solved our mystery. We know how it was built, we know who built it, and we know what it survived. But why on earth is it closed to traffic at exactly 12 noon and 12 midnight? Let's finally unravel this strange daily ritual. It all boils down to this single, haunting quote from the original engineers who designed the bridge. If it collapses, it will be at 12 o'clock. Yep, that's what they said. The problem? They never specified if they meant 12 a.m. or 12 p.m. Because of this incredibly ambiguous warning, a strict precautionary measure was put in place to close the bridge to vehicles at both noon and midnight. Now, whether this is an absolute scientific fact or just an overly cautious reaction to a cryptic comment is heavily debated, but the tradition continues to this very day. And you know, the 12 o'clock rule isn't the only unverified urban legend surrounding the bridge either. There's another really famous myth out there claiming the British possessed a secret key that could mechanically separate or open the bridge right down the middle to let massive ships pass through. And supposedly, they never handed this key over to India. Much like the midnight collapse warning, there's absolutely no solid proof this key ever existed, but it really adds to the rich, mysterious folklore of the structure. Moving from myths back to modern reality, we really need to look at the immense burden this bridge carries today. This is an 81-year-old structure, yet it handles a staggering load, roughly 100,000 vehicles and 150,000 pedestrians every single day. That level of daily wear and tear on an aging steel structure is just astonishing. But the sheer volume of traffic isn't even the only problem. The bridge is facing some surprisingly mundane, yet highly destructive modern enemies. According to engineers, the steel is actively rusting. Why? Well, two main reasons. First, the uric acid from bird droppings is highly corrosive to the steel. And second, and I honestly still can't quite believe I'm saying this, it's entirely a human problem. The constant spitting of chewed tobacco, locally known as gutka, by pedestrians. Years of this acidic, everyday spit hitting the steel pillars is actively corroding the bridge's foundation. It's wild. The bridge has also suffered some major physical trauma in recent years. Back in 2005, a massive cargo ship named the MV Mani was navigating the Hooghly River and actually got stuck underneath the Howrah Bridge. This collision caused severe structural damage to the iconic framework, proving that while it survived World War II bombers, it is still highly, highly vulnerable to modern accidents. And as you might guess, fixing these issues is definitely not cheap. Just repairing the damage caused by birds costs the government 5 lakhs annually. To protect the steel, the entire bridge needs to be painted, which requires 26,500 liters of paint at a massive cost of 65 lakhs. And remember that 2005 ship collision? Fixing that alone required 8 tons of new steel and cost around 50 lakhs. Preserving this marvel takes a tremendous amount of ongoing effort and, of course, money. But here's the thing. The money and the maintenance efforts from the government can only do so much. What you should really take away from this explainer is that preserving the Howrah Bridge is no longer just an engineering problem, it's a civic responsibility. When small human habits like spitting gutka slowly eat away at an 81-year-old marvel, the responsibility falls squarely on the millions of us who cross it daily to treat it with the respect it truly deserves. Which brings us to our final thought for today. We've seen how the Howrah Bridge survived global supply shortages, massive design challenges, and even wartime bombings. But its biggest challenge might just be surviving us. Will we be the generation that protects this magnificent, rivet-bound giant, or will our daily carelessness slowly destroy an irreplaceable piece of history? Let that sink in next time you cross a historic landmark. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.